The billing of the drugs and the pharmacy has three stages. The first stage is the prescribing of the drugs done by the medics. The second stage is the billing of the prescribed drugs. This is done by the cashiers. And the third stage is the dispensing of the billed drugs. This is done by the pharmacist. If the pharmacist plays both the role of the cashier and the dispenser of the drugs, the workflow will have only two stages. We'll present the workflow with three stages as it covers all situations. So first we'll set up the system. This should be done once by the administrator. So under company locations, we should have a pharmacy location created on which all the drugs are in stock, and in the item section we should have the list of drugs which are prescribable. These are items which have the available as drug checked, and they are typically inventory items, so they have stock attached. So we'll start the workflow now. The first step is the prescribing of the drugs. So at consultation, make sure the bill medication is checked. You can start entering the medication. If you try to enter a medication which is not in stock, let's say this one, the system will warn you with this warning sign that this item is not in stock. It is fine at this stage. We can prescribe it if we are sure that it will be supplied until the dispensing. So we add these two. When we are done with the list of drugs, save and close. So this is the first stage. The medic prescribed the drugs. The next stage is the billing stage. The cashier will move to the billing section. We have to note here that each role in this workflow will have access only to the sections of the program which is specific to him. For example, the medics will have access only to medical records. The cashier will have access here only to the billing section, and the pharmacist only to the pharmacy section. So this can be set up by an administrator from administration permissions. In the left side there are some predefined groups. For example, the cashiers, as you see, they don't have access to medical records, to pharmacy. They can see only the billing. So they can see what has been prescribed as billable, both treatments and drugs, and they can issue invoices or receipts on what is billable. The pharmacists have access only to the pharmacy module. They don't have access to billing, medical records, and so on. So we go back to the patient chart billing. Now we are the cashier which does the billing. As you see here, you can choose to invoice the drug on a certain pharmacy, and you can choose here on which pharmacy. So for now, as we have only one, we choose this one. The next checkbox is dispensed pharmacy. This means that when we do the billing, we'll not remove from stock the billed items. Those will be removed later at the pharmacy when the dispensing of the drugs will be done. If we want to remove the stocks during this stage, we can uncheck this, and as you see, the delivered quantity column is automatically filled with the quantity prescribed. Okay, so we check dispense at pharmacy, as we'll do all the 3 stages, and set here also price, as it doesn't have a price. This price will be automatically set if the drug item will have a price. So, and typically they will say have a sale price. The cashier will don't have anything to do here except reviewing the list and pressing build invoice. In fact, the cashier will only have to do a few clicks to do all the billing process. So the first is build invoice. As you see, the invoice is pre-filled with the patient, with the pharmacy location which we choose. It has the date, the number is automatically set, and below is the list of drugs which were prescribed. The cashier didn't have to enter anything manually, just used the data which was entered by the medics and converted into this form. Please note here that the delivered quantity is 0, so this column. So we bill these items, but will not remove anything from the stock. To finish the invoice, press save and close, or if you want to print the invoice to give it to the patient, you can choose the view invoice button. You are prompted to save. Yes, save. And this is the invoice which you can print and give to the patient, or export to PDF, Excel, or send it by email. This invoice is also customizable. By pressing the customize box, you can brand it on your company with your fonts and logos and so on. So for now we just save and close this invoice. We are prompted with the payment. By default, this is the total of the invoice, but if the patient makes only a partial payment, you can enter here a partial payment, and the rest can be paid in a later encounter. So now we'll save. So basically these were the steps which the cashier should do. Press build invoice, make sure these checks are checked if the drugs should be dispensed on the pharmacy. Build an invoice, build the payment with 2 or 3 clicks, and the work of the cashier in this workflow is done. The next stage is the pharmacy, so the third stage, in which the drugs should be dispensed. So the pharmacist will open the patient chart, move to the pharmacy section, or the pharmacist can also use the pharmacy section. It will display the same information, so this is optional, which we'll use. So under the pharmacy section, we can see here, we can choose on which location are we. So we'll use the pharmacy location, which we prescribed before the drugs. In the prepaid section are the drugs which were billed. As you see, the stock quantity is 0, so if we try to dispense this, the program will stop us, as these are not in stock. we will add now in stock these items. This will not be added by the pharmacist. This will be added by the purchases department. We'll add it here, so we do our workflows. So purchases, invoices, new. Here we enter a supplier. Let's say this new supplier. The location is pharmacy. Now we choose the drugs. So this was the first one. Let's say quantity 100. And the other one. So we add this also. And save and close. So this supplier invoice should add drugs to our stock. Now we go back to the pharmacy. As I said, the adding of the supplier invoice should be done by the purchasing department. The pharmacy should typically should have always in stock the drugs which are prescribed. Now the pharmacist can simply dispense all these drugs by pressing the dispense all button, or if the drugs should not be dispensed all at once, she can dispense part of them by pressing the dispense button on the row when she wants to dispense. Let's say we want to dispense one item of this drug. Press the dispense. Here we enter the quantity 1 and deliver. And as you see, the prepaid quantity was subtracted by 1, so it's less, and also the stock is less. Now let's dispense all the drugs. Press the dispense all button. You are asking the confirmation to dispense these drugs. Press yes. And now the drugs all were dispensed. You can see here in this left panel the list of dispensed drugs. These are the dispensed drugs of this patient on the pharmacy and on the period selected here. So this is the workflow of prescribing, billing, and dispensing the drugs. Also, in the pharmacy, outside this workflow, the pharmacist can also sell drugs. So if the pharmacist have the permission, under permission section, here typically it has access to pharmacy module, it has access to prepaid drugs, which are the drugs which were billed, also the billable drugs. These are the drugs which are prescribed. And if the pharmacist has access to dispense, prepay, dispense by receipt, and by invoice, so this means that if these are checked, the pharmacist can build his own invoices and sell drugs to a patient without any relation to the prescribing. So it is the mode of work independent of the medic, the mode of work which is a normal pharmacy which sells drugs. So you can enable also this. This is pretty easy for a pharmacist to do. So for example, if a patient comes in here, she can build a receipt. Actually, dispense by receipt. She can choose here a patient, or she can not enter any patient on this receipt. So this is optional. Next, select the drug, the quantity, and save and close. And these were the drugs which were dispensed by this pharmacist without any relation, as I said, to the patient. You just sell drugs, and this can be enabled or disabled for the pharmacist. So this concludes the workflow of the pharmacy. Again, these are 3 steps. The first, prescribing of drugs by the medics. The second, the billing through an invoice of the drugs. And the third is the actual dispensing of the drug.